great pleasure in introducing someone that I know about. And I know in the program there's a lot of information, but I want to take a few things out of here to tell you about Dr. Mitchell Nichols. He's the senior pastor of the Bible Way Christian Fellowship, and he's executive director of the Eden Center, which serves as a community outreach center. He has a 5-time national award-winning program. He is a producer and host. It's called The Nichols Work. And the reason I know that it is a 5-time national award-winning program is because when I was on it, I think that's when he won the 5th award. I think that now maybe that's not true, but that's what I believe. Also, he is the chairman of the board and the acting president for Cornerstone Television and Network. This is a national Christian network that many may have seen if you ever looked at the station on Pittsburgh. He's a great man. He's a great speaker. And I am certain that you will enjoy what he has to say to us this afternoon. Would you join with me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Dr. Mitchell Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. I don't know if I can confirm that particular was the one that won the 5th national award, but you were probably somewhere in the running. When I came to Pittsburgh today, and I think especially those who are not working in the downtown area, and you were trying to find a parking space, can I see a show of hands? People were trying to. And when I finally thought that I got into the right area where I waited and waited to get into the parking garage at the hotel, I said, I'm in. And the guy says, no, take this piece of paper, follow these directions, make 3 rights. And I started following the directions. And then when I found myself in the other garage, the USX garage, as I was going down, there was a number at the bottom of this paper, and I said, well, I guess I need information. I can call this number. And then my phone said, no service. Isn't that so often how life is? You think you're about to go somewhere, and you wind up getting directions. And the directions are not all what you thought they were. And sometimes, just like that parking garage, the directions lead you down to a place where you cannot find service. When we think about the economic things that are happening in our country, they're startling for many people. In many cases, there are folks who are probably not sleeping well at night. Many of you who either work for somebody else or work for yourself probably from day to day wonder, what is the climate? One of the things I will suggest to you very early on is that what you are seeing now is not much different than what has happened historically in America. If you are a business owner or you're contemplating going into business, there are certain indicators that you need to pay attention to, but what is most critical is as you're looking at your particular business, there are some things that you will need to refine. There are some flexibilities that you need to take aim at, and we'll talk about them in the next few moments. When you consider America, and especially some of the rhetoric that we hear on television today, you will hear people oftentimes talking about either we're in a recession or we're coming out of a recession. As you begin to examine this historically, just for America, recessions oftentimes precede what we've come to know as a depression in the country. The Great Depression of 1929 through 1932, that was devastating. I can remember my mom and others talking about that particular time when they were little children, how people do certain. But if you take a careful look at recessions especially, they usually only lasted several years. America has got a lot of people's attention. Whether you're looking at it from the point of a recession, or you're looking at it from the vantage point of the Great Depression. opportunity. It depends on what you're listening to. Within and put you to the table. See, in my world, there's always going to be an opportunity. The question is, are you going to be positioned to take advantage of that opportunity? And how we do that is very, very important. Before I finish today, I'll talk to you personally about some things that I've experienced. 1929, bad year. I wasn't here then. That's a good thing. Because if I were here looking as good as I look, maybe I could bottle this. There's an opportunity. I wish somebody would understand what I'm talking about. FDR came along in the 30s with certain plans. Ultimately, we wind up around 1935 with Social Security. A plan that is questioned today as to whether those coming era are going to really appreciate the benefits of it, and those who are the X generation or the Y generation, will there be something available? It's all a part of personal planning. There was a time in America when it seemed like even individuals could benefit on something from the system. Those days for many people are gone, because we find even the federal government is in the position to make adjustments, whether they cannot do certain things. Some of you who work for corporate America, whether you want to believe it or not, there are probably discussions taking place as to how they can minimize, and in some cases, eliminate certain benefit programs for you, because it's costing the corporations. Look at the health benefits that people get. If they could get out of that, they would. Pardon me, UPMC. Or Highmark, if there are any Highmark people here. When I look at corporate expenses, two of the biggest things that we have to pay in the corporation that I'm currently running, which is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, in addition to the other things that I do with my other corporation, it's the health costs, and it's the payroll that we have to tackle at least twice a month. Those costs for many corporations are staggering. And some of you who are in management especially, or in executive positions, have to grapple from day to day, week to week, with how will the company stay afloat? How will you have a larger profit margin? Do we downsize? What do we do? Can we begin to eliminate positions? Can we move people around? Can we do attrition? That way when somebody retires, we don't bring them back. Well, whatever those decisions are, they impact you. Some of you who are small business owners oftentimes have to wrestle with those same kinds of things. The old mom and pop idea doesn't exist like it did 30, 40, 50 years ago. So adjustments have to be made. Are things different now than they were during the Great Depression? I would tend to think so. During the Depression, 13 million people became unemployed. This was by 1932. Home building dropped by 80%. I don't think it's that bad, but we hear the term so often in America that foreclosure is rise. Those things somehow alter the kind of quality of life a person embraced years ago, especially during the 70s and 80s in America. There are other things that are affecting people's lives. During the Great Depression, corporate profits had dropped $10 billion. Well, nowadays, one corporation could lose $10 billion. Think about what happened on Wall Street over the past few years. People who never thought that they would lose their jobs lost those particular jobs. I mean, Christians, and we were just talking about that a few moments ago on the dais here. People who thought, I'm going to go to work for this corporation, and this is the place that I'm going to retire from. That is a picture that is now shifted. That is a dream that has somehow vanished for many people. So what do we do about that? We've got to begin to look at certain things different ways. Let me ask this question. How many of you have a GPS system of some type in your car other than your spouse? I say it that way because when my wife and I are traveling together, she says, didn't you hear the lady say, recalculating, updating? Or sometimes with the GPS system, you heard the lady, and I told my wife I'm going to switch it to a man's voice. You know, maybe I'll pay attention. Just talking, sorry. But sometimes the GPS system in your car will say to you, when possible, make a legal U-turn. How often, even in business, you've got to come to the place where you've always done business, you've got to recalculate. How often in business you've got to wait till things are updated so that you can see where you are in that particular business. And some of you who are listening to me probably have to go through the phase that when you can make a legal U-turn, you'll make that in your business. Because there may be things dictating change has to take place in your organization. If you're going to stay afloat, if you're going to survive everything that's happening economically, not just here in the United States, but whatever happens even in the futures talks and the Nikkei indices, those things somehow impact the kind of business. Look at the NASDAQ. Look at some of the other things, the S&P. Some of us have seen our stocks, our personal investments go up and down. Well, how do we recover from that? And how do we make sure that on a day-to-day basis we're still doing business and can be in business and somehow we'll be able to provide for our families? I tend to think that so often we're sitting on the gold mine that we've not considered. You see, even during the Great Depression, again, I think that there were opportunities, but I think only certain people were poised to take advantage of it. Only certain people did not panic, but they took a look at what was taking place. If you own a business, or you're in business for somebody else, your bottom line really matters. And how you pursue whatever it is quite important, not only to the corporation, but to you. Today, on national news, they talked about the unemployment rate. They said it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. It wound up in 9.1%. Some thought it was going to go to 10%. It depends on what city you're living in America. When we begin to talk about places like Detroit and some other places around the country, their unemployment rate is over 10%. That means that there are people who either, number one, found themselves unemployed, or number two, don't even go and sign up for unemployment compensation anymore. They've given up. They said, this isn't working for me, there's nothing for me to do. In my world, there is always, again, another perspective. In my world, there's always hope, and there's a way where we oftentimes will have to change what we're doing. Think about it. The news today, 103,000 new jobs were added during the month of September. Now, maybe that wasn't a new job for you, but it was a new job for somebody. Somebody found employment somewhere. But what do we do? Most of you, I would assume, heard about a man by the name of Steve Jobs. Does that name sound familiar? If you trace his history, those of you who don't know who's Steve Jobs, he is the co-founder, was the co-founder of Apple Computers, or the Macintosh. Died just this week after an 8-year struggle with pancreatic cancer. 8 years. That's almost unheard of. My mother struggled with the same disease and died within a year. By the time she was 62. Steve Jobs, the age of 56. But what impact he had, and in my own personal life, what impact my mother, to make sure that my perspective on life was different, that there was always an opportunity for hope, and there was always a need to make sure that I looked inwardly to prepare myself in a variety of ways for whatever I could wind up doing. Steve Jobs said this: a lot of companies have chosen to downsize, and maybe that was the right thing. We chose, he said, a different path. Our belief was that if we kept putting great products in front of our customers, they would continue to open their wallet. I mean, when you run a business, you want to befriend. And what so many people do is when you start a new business, the first persons you go to, and then when you want to do something else with the business, they check the caller ID, they peek through, they say, oh, they're not interested. Instead of really diversifying where you want to go. But here's another thing that Steve Jobs said. Do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugared water, or do you want to change? Somehow we need to change, again, our perspective. He said at a graduation ceremony in 5. You can't be looking backwards. So you have to, dots will somehow in your, you have to trust in something. Your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever it is. This approach has never let me down, he said. And it has made all the difference in my life. So often when people approach business, they don't explore it as deeply as they can. Look at the possibilities, sit back, see what else it involves. I can think of a story that some of you will recall. That there were these 10 men who became investigators. And their job was to go and check out this property that was in a land that they had not occupied before. 10 of those men came back with a report that we're not able to handle whatever it is, that whatever is in that land is bigger than we are. It will probably swallow us up.
Yes.
But 2 of those men came back with the right kind of a report. Their perspective was different. They had hope, they had faith, they had courage that whatever, if we're going to occupy this land, we need to go on with an attitude that we're well able to take that particular land. The same types of things, I believe, have to happen in business today. If you listen to all of the financial forecasts, you'll be sitting home depressed, wondering, oh my, what is life going to be? But the people who continue to forge ahead are the people who see what it is and say, we're well able to take that land. There's a woman by the name of Melissa Evans, a self-made millionaire at the age of 31, founder of the Broshi Group, who said this: everyone is not broke in this economy. Some are thriving. Monetizing your purpose is the best way to have an abundant life. That's how you see the thing. And it's what you do as a result of it. You say, well, I don't know how. The first thing then is to find out how to do it. The networking thing that I suggested and that was a part of this